Hi, I'm Chris Frazier, and I'm here with Heather and Kevin Daines, and they're going to tell us a little bit about their granddaughter, Esther. Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Thank you.
So, I guess just we'll start with tell me a little bit about yourselves and your family, just kind of a brief life sketch, where you're from, how many kids you have, etc. Let us get to know you a little bit.
Sure. I'm Heather Daines, and I grew up in the Bay Area, California, and went to school in Utah and came back from school and met Kevin on a spring break. And we've been married for 31 years. Right. He's the numbers guy. 32 years. And so we have been here in Washington and have raised our family here. We have 7 children, and our youngest has just graduated from high school and will be leaving for college. So we will be true empty nesters here in just a couple months. And I enjoy paddleboarding. I enjoy snowshoeing. I enjoy going for walks all the time. Just kind of the simple things. So that's me.
Nice.
Yeah, like Heather, I also grew up in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were actually in neighboring towns and knew each other's family a little bit growing up, but kind of met formally during our college years. And my hobbies: I love volleyball. I enjoy frisbee. I enjoyed being a soccer coach for some of my kids and a fan on the sideline. And right now I work for an AI company, get to work on some pretty exciting technology, and enjoy being a dad and a grandpa.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about Esther. Tell me about her personality, favorite memories, anything you love about her. I know she's a baby, right? Is that?
She was 2.5.
Okay. So,
yes.
And old enough to have memories, but.
For sure. Yeah. She is, when I think of Esther, I think of just pure joy. She was, we can't start like this. She was just love, just pure love. And she loved people. And so it was just always beautiful to be around her and to see her with people. She had no hindrance of just going up and being around people. She wasn't able to say many words at all, but one of the words she could say was hi. So she would go up to people all the time, hi. And she was just so friendly and always just reaching out. It was just beautiful to see, and just so interested in others. Something interesting too is she loved men. She was totally drawn to men. When she would hear men, she would turn and go toward them. Or she loved her grandpa, both grandpas, and she loved her dad. She just loved men. It was really interesting to see.
Yeah, I would also just add to that. Esther loved music. She loved dancing. She had her favorites, favorite song, favorite movie, favorite, fictional characters, like Paw Patrol. Those things would bring her a lot of excitement and a lot of enjoyment, and she was fond of sharing that. Heather mentioned that she didn't use many words, didn't have many words. It was one of the conditions of the symptoms or the syndrome that she was diagnosed with at 6 months of age. And so from a very early age, we kind of knew that there would be some limitations and some challenges. And yet despite that, she was incredibly happy and incredibly resilient, and just always very, very fun to be around.
Yeah. She never really had, she was 2.5 years old, but I never saw a tantrum from her or, the screaming meltdown ever. That just was not her nature. So yeah, she was just delightful.
So let me back up. Can you just tell us a little bit about what happened? Like what's the backstory?
Sure. So at 6 months of age, just to give some context, she was diagnosed with something called Dravet syndrome. It's a severe and catastrophic form of epilepsy. and some of the characteristics of someone that has that diagnosis is constant reoccurring seizures of varying kinds. And some would be quite dramatic and quite drastic and would require hospitalization. Dravet syndrome individuals also have limitations that are lifelong. There's no cure, there's no treatment, and often the quality of life can be impacted. So Esther, from the time she was 6 months of age until she passed, probably had at least 6 or 10 hospitalizations of several days where she would recover, take a process of recovering from these pretty severe seizures. So that's kind of a backdrop. She has 2 incredible parents who, despite a difficult diagnosis, just absolutely wrapped their arms around her and gave her a wonderful and tremendous life, and didn't let that impede their ability to, enjoy the park, or, enjoy the outdoors, or, be in the water, or things like that. They were more careful. They were cautious. Medications were always close at hand. Speaking of medications, that was an everyday, multiple medications and a process to try to limit, the number and severity of seizures. But they didn't let that impact her and her experience here on Earth.
It's awesome. That must have been really hard to watch
Yeah.
your kid go through something like that, and your grandkid, to just feel helpless,
Yeah, it was, and you want to do whatever you can for them, and you wish that you could make things right, or change things, or you wish that those companies that are working on a cure or a treatment would have a breakthrough, and you pray for those things, and certainly hope for that. We were fortunate that we got to, even being up here in Washington, and they live down in Utah, we got to have many opportunities to be with her and be around her, either with them coming up or with us going and visiting down in Utah. And we had a real choice experience. We got to watch Esther and her sister Remy for almost 2 weeks, right? Week and a half, I think.
8 to 10 days.
About a week and a half. And that was just such a delight. And, it also kind of carried with it a little bit of kind of extra pressure, maybe, to do all the medications right, in the right order, the right amount, and just do all we could for her to protect her. But we so appreciated that opportunity, and that was just 3 months before she passed. So we really felt blessed to have had that time, and to have had really that unique opportunity with her.
Yeah. You're right, though. It does feel, as a parent, it's so hard to watch kind of this layered thing, to watch your granddaughter suffer, and then to watch your children suffer because their child's suffering. And it's a hard thing as a parent to, I think as parents, you feel like, you kind of lead and guide your children through life of whatever it is. And to all of a sudden have them experiencing something we haven't ever experienced, and don't have any roadmap for, and don't even know how to navigate exactly. And so it feels very just unnerving and scary to kind of walk those waters.
I've often wondered what it would be like. My own mom was, very present in our experience when our daughter died. And, I've wondered what that must have been like for her to watch, I always thought about my own grief, right? Because I was in it. And I thought about, my kid, my older daughter, and my husband, and, I was very much in my own, but I've since been curious, what's that like as a parent to watch your kid go through something like that? Like it's a whole different layer to their grief, you know?
Yeah.
One of the things that our son and his wife did is they tried to kind of shield the rest of the family from some of their darkest times, some of their most difficult times, particularly like in the hospital. They would limit, um, some of the pictures and some of the experiences in the hospital because they wanted us to just focus on the 99% of the time when she was, bouncing around and padding around the house and saying hi and so forth. And that was interesting to kind of see them want to shoulder that and want to kind of protect the rest of the family from that. Um, it was, I think, courageous of them to do that. And, um, looking back, you sometimes wonder, is there something else we could have done or could we have done more? But you also honor their choice and their preferences for how they're, raising and caring for, their daughter.
Yeah. I can imagine it would be interesting as a parent to watch them make parenting decisions that you maybe would have done differently or something, and you kind of have to just defer to their own um, personal revelation, or like their own parents' intuition, if you will, to
Yeah.
just honor that it's their choice and their journey. And um, I can imagine as a parent, it would be hard not to feel like you want to just tell them what to do, oh, you should do this or try that, or have you done this? Or I think a lot of times people have a tendency to want to fix stuff, like I don't know if it was the case for you guys, but in my experience, people would say, "Oh, my cousin's uncle had that," or "My so and so, whatever," and then they suddenly have this magical cure. Oh, well, they did this, and then this, and that worked for them, and da da da. Like people just have this tendency to want to solve it and cure it and fix it, and there are cases where that just doesn't work, you
Yeah.
know.
That's so true. When she was first diagnosed with Dravet, um, it was interesting because Kevin jumped into kind of understanding the science and the diagnosis and yeah, like how do we cure this? And I jumped into kind of understanding the lifestyle people had with children who had this. And yeah, very much like we're going to, figure this out. We're going to solve this. We'll fix this. And realizing that wasn't the case. This was going to be a different journey. So yeah, you do. You want to fix it. You want to take care of your children, and you want to take care of the sweet granddaughter. So yeah, very much so that way.
The other observation I would have is while we haven't gone, didn't go through this ourselves, we, weren't sure even sometimes what advice we would give because this was uncharted territory for all of us. What we did find with some individuals that would learn about maybe Esther's condition. Often, when you first kind of meet someone, you would say something simply like, "Oh, she has a form of epilepsy." A common response is, "Oh, she'll grow out of it," and um, it was well intentioned. It was, I think, for some, it came from experience. Some children do have a seizure or two, or some type of a situation similar. Um, so they would be well intentioned. Oh, she'll grow out of it, and you would just kind of smile and recognize that wouldn't be the case with her. But they definitely, we're trying to offer support and trying to offer hope and encouragement.
Yeah. And I mean, so admired what they did. They were, 24/7 on call with Esther. They had, a doctor who said to them, you have to always keep your eyes on her. And so being a parent to a baby and a toddler and, someone who's running around and going different places and literally to feel that stress and burden of continually keeping your eyes on her, just, you know, doesn't stop. And so part of the syndrome was that her body doesn't self-regulate. So it means that if she got too hot, it wouldn't regulate and cool down. She got too cold, it was the same.
And those could trigger seizures, just like a simple fall and a simple bump of the head could also trigger a seizure. So the
Yeah.
24/7 vigilant kind of parenting is not an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazed with what they really carried on their shoulders, um, all the time, every minute of the day.
What was that like for you to watch from afar? Like you couldn't obviously be right there with them. So talk to me about what it was like to be here, but know that they were going through all of that and just kind of watching from a distance, you know?
Yeah. Um, it was it was difficult, and it was um, being. I mean, being someone that I've been raised in a religious home, and have uh, a strong faith in God. It was one of those things where it was kind of like, what is it that I'm seeking and wanting from Him? And as I watch this, and I just remember for really struggling with knowing, like, what are we praying for here? And it came to the point where we prayed that she would be protected from seizures. There would be seizures, and we knew that, but that she would be protected so that she wouldn't have so many. And so, yeah, it was really really hard, and that's when I just feel like I really had to trust God, trust that um, he knows them, he knows Esther, and he's gonna take care of them, because I couldn't, and I would I wanted to, but I couldn't do what they needed and what Esther needed.
I can definitely identify with the what do you pray for? Right?
Yeah.
Because you, you have to be careful and not pray for a miracle because what if that's not Heavenly Father's will, right? And we know like the whole point of prayer is not to impose our will upon Him, but to align our will with His, right? And so then you're like, well, what am I supposed to pray for then? Because
Because
like
what I want is probably different than what you want this time, Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
so, and
tough.
we had kids here at home that we kind of were all sharing this together, what kind of the same thing of why can't she get better, or why, and what are we praying for, and what are we asking for, and how that looks. Yeah.
We always deferred to just, okay, Heavenly Father, help us to understand and accept your will,
Mm,
whatever that is,
yeah.
because very similar, we didn't know what was going to happen or what to do or what choices to make. And, you know,
Yeah.
so we just kind of deferred to, okay, help us understand what your will is and to accept it, whatever it is, because we can't ask for our kid to be healed because we don't know that that's for sure going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
And they, Austin and Grace, um, made it. They lightened our burden, in the sense that they never they carried it so well. I know it was very very heavy on them, but the way they showed up didn't cause us to um, be more worried than we needed to, because they always had it put on, a strong face, and just loved Esther, and continued on each day. I mean, when we would talk to them after they'd been in the hospital the next day, it was just kind of like, she's out, and where she's playing, or this is what we're going to do, and so it was, yeah, they continued on in just ways that really brought peace to us. Yeah.
but it sounds like they had a lot of faith to be able to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
it requires a lot of faith to have that kind of um, to be able to carry that kind of a burden in that way. And so I'm sure they learned that from you. um, so how do you guys talk to others about Esther's passing? Like, what do you say, and how has that conversation changed over time, like versus now? Like, how do you have that conversation with people?
I think it's kind of interesting. I found that right after she passed, um, I definitely would tell people she's passed on. I'd say she's passed on, and I didn't like it when people would say she passed away or she died, because to me I was like, no, she didn't. She's just passed on, and it was kind of one of those things that I was kind of I don't know, like kind of stuck on. And I remember one day I was walking with a friend who said something about Esther passing on. And I said, thank you for saying that, because that's what I think. That's exactly what I feel, is that she's passed on. She hasn't passed away, and she hasn't died. And so in that sense, I just remember really wanting people and trying to make sure I said, she's passed on, she's passed, and as time has gone on, because of our culture and because of, just in talking to people who do talk about people, they've died, or, I probably have lessened that just for the sake of the conversation. But yeah, that is an important distinction to me, that she's still very, very much a part of our family and has just literally passed on.
For me, when I'm introducing myself and talking about family, I'll often say, like Heather said, we have 7 kids, and I say we have 4 grandchildren. And often, there isn't a follow-up question, or there isn't a, well, how old are they, or anything like that. But sometimes there is. And when there's a follow-up question, and when I feel that that's going to be an interaction that might have, some lasting potential, then I will share that our oldest, our first granddaughter, has passed on. And I remember shortly after talking about her heaven day, and it happened to coincide with our youngest son's birthday. It happened to be the same day. So within our family, we kind of memorialized it as, well, it's our son's birthday, but it's Esther's heaven day. And I like to think of it in those terms, and think of it also as she's gone on ahead, and kind of keeping that kind of perspective, or kind of keeping that, some of that language, I think has been helpful. Often when, I do bring up that we've had a granddaughter that's passed, that usually creates an opportunity where, the other individual has also experienced some loss of some kind. And so it is an opportunity to connect a little bit on a deeper level, or at least to share a little bit in that feeling, in that the grief that you feel. And so while I don't necessarily lead with it, if it's a relationship that's going to, continue and not just be a chance encounter, often it can lead to, I think, a helpful conversation in talking about Esther, and then celebrating her, talking about all of the different ways in which we love her, and that we felt love from her as well. We also, try to bring up, some of the little miracles, or what we sometimes call tender mercies, that we experienced, and that our son and his wife also experienced around that time. And that is also something that helps to uplift us, and I think encourage us. So.
I can totally identify. People ask how many kids I have, and sometimes I catch myself like you. I have to see, okay, is this going to be a relationship that I'm going to continue? Is this person somebody that I'm going to have continual interactions with, or is this just like a one-off, person at the grocery store kind of situation, And if it's the latter, I'm probably not going to launch into the whole, well, I actually have 3 kids, but but I have found the same, that when I share about Emily and explain that we actually have 3 kids, one of them just happens to live in heaven, then oftentimes, if they haven't had a similar experience, they at least can kind of, it's a moment of connection, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been interesting to experience, for sure. So talk to me about triggers. Like, are there triggers or certain things that bring back like a wave of grief? And if so, what are they? And maybe is there like a pattern that you've noticed, or maybe certain times? Just let's talk about triggers for a minute.
I don't know if it's so much a pattern. I do know that one of the triggers is music, because Esther loved music so much. That was we were super engaged with her in music. The dancing to certain songs she loved, and so when we hear the Paw Patrol song, or when we hear Justin Timberlake song, it totally takes me right back to those things. I would often sing Wheels on the Bus with her so many times, and so that's been an interesting thing because we have other grandchildren, and like as silly as that song is, it's been a hard one for me to now sing to them, and that's okay. I mean, it's I've sung it sometimes, but it's kind of one of those things too that is just is Esther, and I was able to sing it to her the day before she passed on at the hospital, and so it just has it just brings back a lot of emotion, and yeah, and Esther just loved music, so that was special. I think also for me, it was really interesting. We went to um, take care of their kids. When was it? February, just this year, February. I think it was February this year, and we got in late that night, and so my son had gone to bed. We just said, go ahead and go to bed and leave the door open, and we'll come in. And so we came in with our suitcases. And the last time I'd been there, I think, was around Christmas time. And so when we came in to the house and brought in our suitcases, and it was dark and we were going up the stairs and everything, that was a huge trigger. I mean, I'm all of a sudden in her space and in their house. That's one of the things about our grief, is that our everyday world was different than hers. So we didn't have the clothes and the toys and the movie, all those things that you pass every day. But to then go back into that house, it was just, yeah, I just was flooded with just the fact that she isn't in this house right now, and should be. So yeah, just being back in her space does definitely trigger.
For me, music for sure, in a similar way as Heather. Also pictures. We have an internet connected picture frame in our kitchen that just rotates and revolves with pictures, and often pictures of Esther will pop up. They will bring back certainly sweet memories, but at the same time, as we see those memories that they depict, the fact that we won't have another one of those here on Earth is often a difficult thing. She gave really big hugs, and one of the pictures on that picture frame is a big hug that she's giving her dad, and it just seems to be just a real embodiment of how much she loved, and that's a hard one to see when it pops up. So I would say music. I would say pictures. It was interesting. She passed away in a hospital that's not far from their home, and driving to their house, it's kind of hard to avoid that hospital. It's right there on the road, and so seeing things like that, remembering some of our experience there, we then later learned that our son, often when going to work, he said almost every day he passes it, and it causes him to break down and cry. And here it is, more than a year later, and sometimes just the memories that you feel, and sometimes those locations of grief, can really just kind of get you. So when I see it now, I think both about Esther, but I also think about our son and what he experiences every day. So those would be a couple of examples.
We identify. It took me a really long time to be able to pass the hospital where our daughter passed away as well. Like it's hard. I just passed it today, and thankfully I was fine. But it's been 5 years, 6 years, so yeah, it's hard for sure. And I've always said, there's the waves of grief that you expect, right? The triggers that you can anticipate. Like, oh, this is the anniversary of either a person's passing or their birthday or some significant time frame, and you can kind of anticipate, okay, this is going to be hard, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the ones that just totally hit you out of left field, and you're like, what the heck, where did this come from? You're just totally caught off guard. I call those sneaker waves, right? Like when you were at the beach and you're like expecting it to only get to your ankles, and suddenly you're up to your hips, because the wave is bigger than it looked like it was going to be or something. Yeah, it can just come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and it's hard.
And like you said, where you pass by, we were just on a date the other night and passed by this shopping area that we had taken Esther to. And that's the type of thing. We're just, walking by, and all of a sudden, like, this is where we went with Esther. And, yeah. And it just brings it all back. Yeah.
My youngest daughter and I recently were a part of a service project. And at the very end of that service project, the last song that was playing was one of Esther's favorite songs. And while I've heard it here and there, there was something about that being the last song during the service project that just kind of got to me, and I got pretty emotional thinking about it.
So talk to me about how you relate to peers who have not experienced the loss of a grandchild. Like, is that something that you guys have encountered, and how do you handle that? Like when you're talking to other friends or whomever that also have grandkids, but maybe they haven't experienced losing a grandchild, and you guys have, obviously. Like, how has that different or changed, or just how's that dynamic when you encounter somebody that hasn't?
People have been so wonderful, just so kind. And I think that, with children, it is it's somewhat different in that it's not, sometimes with older, someone who's older, you kind of feel like they've lived a good life. But when people hear about children passing, they just have a real compassion. And so with my friends, it was just, such compassion, such understanding, and seeking to, like, really wonderful about wanting to let me talk about it, wanting to ask about it, wanting to just be available. I know that, it is interesting where I do have a friend has a grandchild that's 1 month different than Esther. And she was talking this Christmas about going to the Polar Express or something with him. She says, we're going to the Polar Express. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's the age Esther would be. Yeah. And, I didn't say anything because I didn't need to, but just realizing, like, there's that timeline that will always be there. But people have been wonderful, never intending to hurt or, be dismissive or anything. People have been very, very kind and compassionate.
That's my experience too. I think I kind of braced a little bit for maybe some situations or some interactions that may be challenging, but that hasn't been my experience. I think people have been very gracious and wanting to extend love and kindness as much as possible, and some will delicately say, well, tell me about Esther on her best day, or tell me about what's something that you loved about her, and opportunities to focus on those things that do honor her and celebrate her, and acknowledge all the good that she was able to experience has been a blessing, I think, for me.
So I guess kind of on the heels of that, sometimes people can be a little insensitive, not meaning to people who are grieving. You know, phrases like "well, at least," or you know, um, things like that. People say stuff that sometimes is less than helpful.
Mhm.
um, Did you guys have any experiences with that? If so, share an example.
Do you know what's interesting is, like I said, being the parent of children who are going through this and never having gone through this myself. um, I feel that I probably have said things that are more, that I don't think I've had someone say something to me, or I've been like, oh, but I know that I've said things to my son and his wife and thought that that was not, you know. Um, I mean, I just, when they celebrated her third birthday, um, they did a really nice celebration at the cemetery, and they had balloons and they invited the family, and they, got donuts that spelled her name, and we weren't there, so they called and told us all about it. And I just remember saying, I'm so glad you got to, that her birthday was exactly like how you wanted it to be. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's just those things where I say it, meaning like, I'm really happy it was, but then again, I'm like, a good day, or what, what was it? And so I think, as being the parent, I'm more the one that probably does that. Because yeah, just those things that you say afterwards, you're like, that wasn't what I intended. And it probably wasn't the best thing to say.
I'm kind of drawing a blank in terms of people, situations where there's something that's been insensitive. I think, like Heather, I think I've been, maybe try to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more cognizant of what we say or what we hear, just because we have gone through this and have a son and his wife that still continue to grieve, but also celebrate various different situations. Um, I, I really can't recall, and I'm grateful for that, but can't recall a comment that I would consider insensitive. Um, so I guess I've been fortunate in that regard.
Good. I hope it stays that way. It's hard. Like people, like I said earlier, people have a tendency to want to fix it and help, right? And sometimes what they say is actually the opposite of helpful. Because like when someone uses an at least statement, at least you got to spend time with her, at least blah, 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 right? Like they're trying to make you feel better because you did get some time, right? But it kind of negates your actual feelings because, sure, I did get this time, but I'm also sad that I didn't get all of the rest of the time that I should have had. So you're basically telling me I'm not allowed to be sad about not having all of that, and I should just be happy with what I did get. You
Mm.
know, um, and so yeah, people, I think they just in their effort to try and make you feel better because let's face it, when somebody is sad or upset, it's kind of off-putting. Like you feel like you have to do something to, to help. And so we as humans have a tendency to try and fix, and sometimes you just can't. All you can do is just sit with the person.
And that's for sure how you feel with your children. You want them
Yeah.
to be happy. And so like, yeah, and just realizing we just have to allow them the grief. I wish I could. I wish there's something I could do to help that heartbreak. I wish there's something I could do to take that away. And you're right. You just have to let it be, and yeah, sit with it.
So you said that you guys had a lot of support and people were really helpful. Tell me more about like specific what words or actions would you suggest to someone who is trying to support a grieving person? I think you guys are a perfect example of that because while you're grieving too, you're really also supporting your kids, right? And so um, I guess just speak to us about what would you suggest to someone who's kind of in that position where they're supporting someone who's grieving? How can they show up for them in the best way? What does support look like?
Um, I think for someone like me, it's kind of interesting. I I mean, what I would say first of all is just don't overthink it. Don't overthink, like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should do that. Would that bother them? Would that, like, I'm someone who, I know that, and this, again, like talking about that, this is in for my son and his wife. I think I held back often, being like, I don't want to get in their way. I don't want to get in a very intimate space of them, their grief. That might bother them. That might hurt them, that might, all these thoughts of, I don't know. And so my thought is just don't overthink it. Just just step up and step in. I think of wonderful, wonderful friends who literally just did that for us. Um, I have a friend who, when she heard about this and then immediately asked, well, how is her little sister? How's Esther's little sister doing? And I said, she was just about one at the time. And I said, she's just kind of so sad. She's crawling around and just kind of like this little puppy almost, just so sad about it. And she just texted me the next day and said, send me some pictures of your family and Esther. And I said, okay. And she comes over a few days later and has made a board book of the Esther and her family and us, that this little, 1-year-old can hold and play with, and a little key ring with pictures on it. And just things that, she didn't ask, she didn't, do, just do it. And, when people showed up, I had a really good friend who knew we were going to be traveling to go back to the funeral. And somehow, in conversation, I just said, I'm not going to go to the grocery store because we're leaving in just a couple, 2 days, and I'm not going to go to the grocery store and get anything. So we're just making do with what's here. And she showed up that night with dinner for the next few days while we were here at home. Didn't say, can I bring food? She just showed up. And so, yeah, I would just say, just do it. If you think of it and you just do it, and don't worry about, if you're someone like me, don't worry about getting in the way or doing something you shouldn't do. I think most of the time people feel loved and appreciate it.
I remember when I had a parent that passed away, and some family friends sent over a simple plant. I'm not a plant person. I don't even know what the plant was, but I still remember the gesture, and I still remember a very, very simple card that was like, "We're thinking of you," and it meant so much. And the fact that they would just take that time and put that on the porch, and for me to discover. I remember some individuals, some family, some friends of our son and his wife, who would bring a meal over, like you were talking about. And one friend just said, "I'm bringing dinner the next 7 days," or I don't remember what it was exactly. um, and it wasn't even just a doorstep dinner, which are great. It was, "Hey, how are you doing?" And just want to check in with you. We're praying for you. And it meant so much. Um, Others felt inspired to share music or to share memories, and were, I think, inspired to just act, kind of like what Heather was saying. If you feel impressed, if you feel prompted, if you feel you've had some direction from God to act, then just follow through on that. And you just never know how that might be a healing balm for someone at just the right time. Um, there's no one way to do it. There's no one certain thing, but just to act on that. And I think the genuine love and care and concern comes through with these acts of kindness.
Has it been your experience? So how long ago was this that Esther passed on?
It was a year ago, so in April 28th, this last year.
Okay, so a little over a year then.
Yeah.
In my experience, it felt like all of that stuff was happening right at the beginning, right? Like people were showing up, they're doing meals, they're doing all the things, right? But then as time went on, it felt like that sort of waned. And not that I needed meals at 6 months out, you know what I mean? But it felt like the support kind of died out a little. And over the years, now I'm six years out, I would add to what you guys said, all of those things, keep doing it, right? Keep showing up, keep remembering, on on the heaven days or, the whatevers, to just send that text. Like you said, we're thinking about you, we're praying for you. It doesn't have to be a plan. It doesn't even have to be a show up, just a text, a something. Um, because I think the hardest part is as time goes on, people move on with their lives, which is expected, right? But those of us that are still close to that experience still feel that. And knowing that we're not the only ones that remember our loved one's existence, especially when they're little, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't have this lifetime of legacy to leave behind, especially, at least from a parent's perspective, it's hard not to be afraid that nobody's going to remember that your kid existed, you know? Um, and so to know that you're not the only one who remembers is so meaningful. So I would just add to what you guys said, like, keep showing up, keep texting, keep checking in, um, because people are going to need that support always, not just the first 6 months or the first year.
Yeah.
I'll have to give Heather a little shout out here. So we lost a nephew about 22 years ago. And Heather's made it a point to reach out to her sister right around the time of his birthday. And we'll just reach out. And sometimes it's a text, sometimes it's a quick phone call. And I know that that's meaningful. And I know that that has cultivated love in that relationship, her care and concern. And so, maybe, it's putting a note in a calendar or putting a note in a phone or something that, can prompt a reminder that may be appropriate for some in some relationships. But I know that that's been meaningful, and I've been so impressed with her remembering that and making a point to connect with her sister.
Well, like you said, I mean, your world changed. Your world's changed, and so to know that someone's aware, of those times and those things, yeah, that it's not forgotten.
Looking back, what can you identify that may have helped prepare you emotionally or spiritually to survive an experience of this? Like, what kind of spiritual or emotional preparation did you have? Obviously, you didn't know it in the moment, but now looking back, you're like, oh, this experience helped me to be able to go through this.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was just talking to one of my sisters a couple months ago, and talking about how there's um, I'm not a super emotional person, and so a few years ago, I just really started to try and understand the emotions I was feeling. Like, literally, like, what am I feeling right now, or what is that emotion? What does that feel like? And understanding the emotions I was having, and understanding the way I was thinking about things, and there was a lot of study I did in that, and that definitely, and again, you never know what you're going to, what you're preparing for. But I just remember telling her that made such a huge difference, when Esther passed, to be able to tap in a little bit more to my emotions, and to tap into what I was feeling, and often before didn't even know or understand. In fact, that was probably one of the things about grieving. It's easy for me to busy myself out of whatever I want, and so to literally, like, make myself stop at the picture frame there on our desk and be like, stop and look at this right now. um, and so that just was a big thing for me to acknowledge those emotions, and be willing to feel them.
I would say, I think because, and this obviously doesn't happen for everyone, but there are some obviously that pass very suddenly and unexpectedly. Um, with Esther and with her diagnosis at 6 months, we almost kind of had um, a warning. It was kind of some preparation to know, this is quite likely an outcome that we can anticipate. And so that was fortunate in our regard. I think from a spiritual perspective, I think our understanding of life after death, understanding that life continues, and a hope in and a belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ and our eventual resurrection has been something that has kind of underpinned um, um, the the hope and the confidence, and what reminds me to, obviously grieve and to feel the emotions, but also have a hope in an eventual reunion, and that has provided just immeasurable comfort and perspective for me.
I agree on both accounts. Grief, I feel like, is a huge, it's a huge emotional experience that I feel like our culture doesn't do a great job of preparing us for. Like, we expect to feel joy or we expect to feel pain at some point, but nobody ever warns you that you can feel both of those feelings simultaneously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think ever in my life until I experienced profound grief that I realized that you could feel two opposing emotions at the exact same time. Like, you
Yeah.
can be happy and sad, right? Or you can be mad and happy, like, just there's so many emotions involved. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you were able to get comfortable with feeling emotions so that when you experienced this, you were able to just kind of lean into that some more and really allow yourself to feel all of that because it's a lot of feels.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, in fact, I was just recently reading a book about, I have to see if I had the title, about lament and it bringing you closer to God. And that was such an aha to me that I can, I kind of felt like I needed to just hurry through this. Like I need to hurry through this to be on the side of faith and hope. But to realize this process of lament, this process of grief is all part of this beautiful process and relationship with God. And so, yeah, that feeling it is, you don't have to, you can do both. You can have lament and you can have worship. You can have, grief and you can have faith. And exactly, yeah, that you can have both. And that was very helpful to understand, because otherwise it kind of felt like, yeah, almost like you have to choose one. Am I going to stay in grief or am I going to stay in faith and hope? And so, yeah, I really appreciated that.
I feel like with what you said, Kevin, I totally agree. Like having a knowledge of, life after death and what we believe and the resurrection of the Savior, like that was a huge, huge comfort to me. But I had a hard time with people not allowing me to have space to feel grief too, right?
Mm,
Like if I was grieving, then somehow that meant that I didn't have enough faith,
mm,
right? And to be able to reconcile the two of those and be like, no, grief is part of the experience. Like you said, like this is part of growing closer to my Heavenly Father. Like, yeah, this experience sucks and it's hard, but at the other end of it, I also have this faith. And when the two of those things come together, then my relationship with Heavenly Father is stronger. And so, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
I like that. It reminds me of the experience in the Bible where when Lazarus passes away, Jesus wept, even knowing he was going to perform a miracle, even knowing that in just a short amount of time he would raise him from the dead. He still felt the emotion, probably for himself, probably for um, the close friends and family that were there at that time. And so I think that supports that idea of faith and hope. At the same time, you can feel grief, you can feel sadness, and one isn't in conflict or one doesn't rob the other.
That's actually one of my favorite stories about the Savior. It wasn't before, but after I lost a child, yeah, that was that was a huge one for me. I'm glad you brought that up.
But I did think of something that someone said that was not intentional at all, but could be taken the wrong way. I remember not long ago, a friend was kind of hosting his kids and all of his grandkids. And I kind of saw kind of the family that was gathered and just said, "Oh, it looks like you've got, a lot of your kids here, or it looks like you've got your grandkids." And the comment was made something along the lines of, "I've got all my grandkids here. It's the best. Like that's the best thing." And again, no harm, no malice, no wrongful intent, but it was one of those things where, boy, on a bad day, I might have taken that the wrong way. Like, that won't be my experience. I won't be able to gather in this life all of my grandchildren ever. So those are hard to guard against, because this is just someone who's happy in the moment for what they're experiencing, but um, maybe it's just a gentle caution as we interact with others, and as we ideally kind of consider their situation to maybe just take that into account. Again, no harm taken, but that was one that did come to mind, right?
Yeah, it stung a little bit, right? Like, oh, that's great for you, but I'll never have that. Yeah, I can identify well. Different experience, but same feeling.
Mm.
How would you guys say you've changed as a person because of your experience? How do you feel like you're different now? What's changed?
Um, I would say I've become a little less afraid of death or talking of it. I know that it's been very uncomfortable for me, and and yeah, and to kind of, like we said, like, how do you show up to people and how do you talk about it with them, and realizing um, they just want to talk. Don't that the not talking's what's hard, and so just yeah, I feel like I just feel more um, compassion for people, and allowing them to talk through their challenges, their difficulties, their grief, um, and ask, ask and show the interest. And I think before I kind of was like, well, if they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. But no, the invitation to do that. And I feel like that's what I've realized, and tried to do more of that, of inviting people to share more of what's in their heart.
I love that because I often don't talk about Emily unless someone asks or invites, right? Like, nobody wants to hear about my dead baby. Like, that's not a conversation I lead with, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's not something that I start a conversation about. But if someone asks me, either about her or about how I'm doing, or assuming that the person already knows, um, it's always more meaningful for me when someone asks, because then I feel safe and like it's allowed to be talked about, versus um, if the invitation isn't there, then I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to bring the mood down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because for sure it's important to let people know that it's okay to talk about it.
First thing that came to mind is in the hospital that weekend that Esther um, passed on. I remember giving my son a couple of hugs, just when everything was kind of happening, and I don't think I'd ever felt that much grief and sadness before, and it shocked me a little bit how deep that was, how soul wrenching that was. When you talk about heartache, I mean, it kind of redefines what heartache feels like and what that means. And I remember my son hugging me, and me wanting to, like we talked about before, somehow make it all better, or somehow be a strength for him. But I think I've changed in the depth of what I felt. So maybe a broader range of emotion maybe than I had before, which I hope has, engendered more compassion and more understanding for others. And not that they have to have this extent of an experience, but certainly the range of emotion that I felt, I think, has ideally created a greater capacity for me to be empathetic and understanding of others and what they go through. And it doesn't have to be a life and death situation, but just other situations of heartache and difficulty.
So, just to close, our kind of signature last question that we always ask is, what do you think it means to grieve well?
Um, I think I would say grieving well is doing it in your own way. Um, I mean, it could be easy to look and to read about, to find out about, to look at other people, to see where they were at this time, and feel like you're behind or you're not doing it right or it's not. But just let it be your individual, unique path, um, whatever that is. And that, I don't know, well seems a little bit, is it oxymoron? A little like, do you grieve well? I don't know if that really goes together, but yeah, you grieve and grieve in your own way and be good with that.
I guess for me, I lost my mom in 2022, and then Esther passed in 2024. And so, it's been a little over a year and a little over 3 years, respectively. Um, for me, grieving well isn't shutting out the emotion that comes, or the the longing sometimes that's there, or the feeling of missing them. Not shutting that out, but allowing myself to experience that, allowing myself to have recollections and memories, and at times tears come, and to give myself the space and the grace to be able to feel that. Um, I feel that if I tried to just wall that up or block all of that, at least for me, that wouldn't be grieving well. And I've come to appreciate emotion. I've come to appreciate, tears and sadness and those kinds of things as ways in which I grapple with and deal with the loss of a loved one. And so for me, grieving well is giving myself the space for that, and not being embarrassed or not being shy to share that as a situation might allow. I've done that with Heather. I've shared here and there, hey, I experienced this today, or I really missed Esther today. Here's why. Those opportunities, I think, are examples of grieving well, and it creates connection with family and with loved ones.
I appreciate that perspective because I think a lot of times men are expected to be the stoic kind of, push it down. We gotta, carry our family and be the strong ones. And so to hear you say that you've embraced kind of that emotion and given yourself space to feel that is really powerful because it gives other men permission to do the same. It's women cry. That's what we do, right? Like it's expected. But there's kind of this unspoken cultural thing of, the men have to carry on and be strong and don't cry. And so I'm grateful that you can share that example with others.
I heard at a funeral a few years ago a comment that went something like this: as you share your happiness, it like multiplies, and as you share your grief, it like reduces in some way. I don't think that's the exact quote, something like that. And certainly that's been my experience. And even with my son and his wife, I will sometimes just reach out with a text or a simple call and just say, I miss her today. And I think it's good to do that. I think it's good to remember, good to acknowledge, help them know that she's not forgotten, not not cast aside, and it creates connection between me and them. And I think that is something that Esther would want.
Thank you guys so much for this meaningful conversation about your sweet Esther. I really enjoyed getting to hear more of her story and to learn from your guys' experience and your faith and example. This has been really an awesome experience, so thanks for that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.